Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. Let's take a look at the headlines. UN Secretary General Guterres arrives Nigeria on first official visit. Federal government insists that blocking unlinked SIMs will safeguard online transactions. Plus, relief as Mariupol steelworks refugees arrive to safety. The details of these stories and more in a moment. Tonight, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has arrived in Nigeria on a two-day official visit. He proceeded to Borno, the state ravaged by the decade-long insurgency, as the country makes concerted efforts to wipe out terrorism. According to the United Nations Information Center in Nigeria, Guterres is expected to meet with the Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum in Maiduguri before embarking on a field mission where he will meet families affected by the Boko Haram insurgency. The center noted that the UN chief will also evaluate the impact of climate change on vulnerable communities, as well as assess progress and challenges to the COVID-19 recovery. In the meantime, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is expected to officiate a wreath-laying ceremony for victims of the 2011 bombing at the UN House in Abuja tomorrow. The United Nations Information Center in Nigeria noted that Guterres will also meet with President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osibanjo and other top cabinet officials. It said the Secretary General will also hold talks with youth and women delegates, religious leaders, diplomatic communities, and journalists. This is reportedly the first visit by the UN Secretary General to Nigeria since his appointment, and the visit is part of his annual Ramadan solidarity trips to nations. Away from that, President Muhammadu Buhari has downplayed claims that he has a favored candidate for the 2023 elections. He made the remark while answering questions from journalists after observing the Eid al-Fitr prayers at Mambila Barracks parade ground in Abuja. The president said he would hand over to whoever Nigerians elect in 2023. In the meantime, President Buhari has discussed issues bordering on military cooperation, bilateral ties, and global interests with his Turkish counterpart Tayyip Erdogan. The discussion took place via a call from Erdogan on the occasion of this year's Eid al-Fitr celebrations. President Buhari and Erdogan also covered a range of issues pertaining to the ongoing discussions between the two countries on the supply and local manufacture of military equipment, as well as matters of strategic cooperation. Meanwhile, President Buhari has blamed the delay in rescuing those kidnapped in the Abuja-Kaduna-bound train from their abductors' den on tactics deployed by the terrorists and other bandits using their victims as human shields. This is as the president assured families of the kidnapped victims that efforts were ongoing to ensure safe return of all those being held by bandits. He also noted that unlike professional soldiers, bandits and terrorists do not respect the rules of engagement and therefore could resort to harming their hostages when under threat. President Buhari noted that the service chiefs and the Inspector General of Police had the responsibility of locating the bandits in their hideouts for elimination. In a separate development, the federal government has urged Nigerians to consider the benefit of linking their SIM cards to their National Identification Number, NIN, for the safety of their online transactions and services, rather than the inconveniences of banning them from making calls. The Nigeria Communication Commission, NCC, said it blocked the unlinked SIMs for the safety of Nigerians involved in online transactions, including financial and educational online services, and prevention of crimes and criminality by the security agencies. He charged Nigerians to consider such benefits above inconveniences. The Executive Commissioner, Stakeholders, Management of NCC, Adeleke Adewolu, disclosed this at the Village Square dialogue held at the Centenary Hall, Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital. Meanwhile, federal government says it is still not aware of reasons behind the ongoing strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. This is as it said universities founded and being funded by state governments had no business joining their federal counterparts on strike if the cause of the strike bothered on the claimed issues. Speaking in Abuja, the Minister of State for Education, Emeka Nwajuba, said the union lacked basic rights to dictate to the government how salaries of members, whom he noted were employees, should be paid by their employer. He said the federal government had limited resources and could not borrow money to pay ASU, as it did not fund infrastructure. On legislative matters, Deputy Senate President Ovie Omoagege says the passage of the Electoral Act by the National Assembly is to pass a message convincing Nigerians that their votes will count. Omoagege, who is also an All Progressives Congress's governorship aspirant, told his supporters in Ughelli, north of Delta State, that the act was enacted by the National Assembly and duly assented to by President Muhammadu Buhari. According to him, people have been misinformed about the act, but the introduction of a bimodal system of voting will foster transparency, as well as ensure a fair and credible electoral process for the forthcoming 2023 general elections. It could be recalled that the National Assembly had on January 31 transmitted the bill to President Buhari, who signed it into law on February 25. Away from that, the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria has rejected the proposed collateral payment of outstanding national minimum wage by the National Assembly Service Commission. The National Assembly workers threatened to embark on strike if the management of the National Assembly failed to pay the arrears to all categories of workers by the end of May. In another development, National Human Rights Commission has identified the press as a critical agent for protection of democracy and development. NHRC Executive Secretary Tony Ojukwu made the remark in honor of the 2022 World Press Freedom Day. Ojukwu said the press should be supported for effective discharge of its constitutional duties as watchdog of society. He observed that Nigerian journalists fought very hard to achieve the nation's democratic status and deserve a better deal. Ojukwu asked the society to see journalists as the oxygen of democracy and agents of change and development. He said the pen pushes constitutional duty to hold the government accountable to the people, distinguished them as those on essential duty to the nation. On security, Inspector General of Police Usman Baba has upgraded the Nigeria Police Crime and Incident Database, a center for providing aid to the police in acquiring credible electronic information. In a statement, the force noted that the upgrade was done to support investigations and strategic operational and tactical planning. It said the action would facilitate easy identification of suspects, crime location, modus operandi, global positioning system to geolocate crimes, among others. The force noted that the upgrade of the Nigeria Police Crime and Incident Database had been commissioned by President Muhammadu Buhari in 2020 and had become imperative as criminals now apply technology to perpetuate their activities. Still on security, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahaya, has directed the military to be ruthless with Boko Haram and Islamic State West African Province ISWAP terrorists to protect Nigeria's corporate existence. Addressing the 2022 Salah luncheon for wounded troops at the Mai Malari Cantonment, Maiduguri, Borno State, the Army Chief instructed soldiers to seize weapons and neutralize the insurgents. Yahaya, who charged the combatants to have more determination, commitment and aggressiveness in ridding the country of terrorists and criminals, urged them to end the war that has claimed several lives and property. In Zamfara State, a fire incident has ravaged an office of the Independent National Electoral Commission situated in the Kaura Namoda local government area. Reports say firefighters had arrived at the scene in time but could not put out the fire due to the lack of water in their fire truck. Elsewhere, Ondo State Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu has advised his party, the All Progressives Congress APC, to avoid self-inflicted crisis ahead of the 2023 elections. Akeredolu said it would be dishonest for anyone to argue against rotation at this period. The two-term governor on the platform of the APC made the remark in a statement titled, "Our party, APC, must tread the path of equity." He observed that the party had ensured that the principle of rotational representation guided its decision at the just concluded convention. The governor added that the national chairmanship position was zoned to the north, while all other offices were filled on that understanding. To Rivers State now, where Governor Nyesom Wike has approved the payment of pensions to additional 1,191 retirees. Deputy Governor Dame Harry Danigo confirmed this at an event to mark the 2022 Workers' Day, where he represented Wike. Harry Danigo said the government had provided stipends to all state secondary schools to enhance studies, as well as approved immediate release of monthly pension salaries of additional 1,191 retirees. In another development, Benue State Governor Samuel Otom has commended the courage and resilience of the Nigerian press in the sustenance and promotion of democracy in the country. In a goodwill message to commemorate this year's World Press Freedom Day, Governor Otom said credit should be given to the press for its resilience in the face of daunting challenges to continue to inform, educate and entertain the populace. The United Nations General Assembly had declared May 3 every year to celebrate the media and appreciate the importance of press freedom globally. The theme of this year's World Press Day is Journalism Under Digital Siege. The governor, who noted the harsh environment under which the Nigerian media operates, urged the federal government to consider subsidies and import waivers for media equipment. Back here, United Nations has declared May 3 annually as World Press Freedom Day to raise awareness of the importance of freedom of the press and remind governments of their duty to respect and uphold the right to freedom of expression. The theme for this year's Journalism Under Digital Siege focuses on the digital era's impact on freedom of expression, the safety of journalists and access to information. Our reporter has the rest of the story.
Ensuring precise situation reports during the COVID-19 pandemic to inform decision makers and save lives, bringing global attention to climate crisis and those in war zones, uncovering truth and seeking transparency and accountability from those in power. A lot of times, journalists face attempts to silence them from many sides. Women journalists are usually at risk of harassment and violence, preventing journalists from doing their jobs. The United Nations General Assembly has declared May 3rd to be World Press Freedom Day to celebrate the fundamental principles of freedom of the press, defend the media from attack, and pay tribute to journalists who have lost their lives in the exercise of their profession. This year's theme, Journalism Under Siege, not only highlights ways to endanger journalism, but also the consequences of all this on public trust over digital communications. The United Nations General Secretary, Antonio Guterres, has called on governments, media organizations, and technology companies to join the fight in protecting press freedom.
The methods and tools change, but the goal of discrediting the media and covering up the truth remains the same as ever. And the results are also the same. People and societies that are unable to distinguish fact from fiction and can be manipulating in horrifying ways. On World Press Freedom Day, we honor the essential work of the media in speaking truth to power, exposing lies, and building strong, resilient institutions and societies. We call on governments, media organizations, and technology companies everywhere to support these crucial efforts.
This is a call to join UNESCO to ensure the safety of media workers and press freedom, because without freedom of the press, there is no democratic society. Without freedom of the press, there is no freedom. Edidion Martin, reporting for Spectrum Television.
Shilna Kwaibom, a public health practitioner, Professor Ukeme Eyo, has advised Nigerians to seek overall health and well-being by ensuring safety within and outside the work environment. According to him, being security conscious is important to individual health and well-being. A correspondent has a report.
Safety is known as the condition of being free from danger or harm, as well as the conscious efforts to control hazardous objects and substances in order to achieve an acceptable level of health. Therefore, safety and health can go hand in hand. Conversations surrounding safety and health focuses on enhancing social dialogue towards general well-being within and outside the work environment. Within the work environment, employers have been encouraged to maintain a safe and healthy workplace by implementing recommended safety and health procedures to prevent workplace injuries, illnesses, and deaths, increase productivity, as well as reduce the sufferings and financial strains these events may cause on workers and the employer. Outside the work environment, a public health practitioner, Professor Ukeme Eyo, advises on best safety practices.
Security is a problem now all over the world, not only Nigeria. You go out there, you must be on alert. Observe your environments. Don't take things for granted. If you're inside the keke, listen to the language they are using. They have coded messages for female victim, a male victim, a young victim. If you're driving on the road, look at your rear mirrors. Lock your cars. Don't stop at junctions to ask somebody this list to wear. Get your instruction before you leave your house. If you're inside your house, lock your doors. Don't stay outside before 7 p.m.
Ensuring good health and safety practices go a long way in enhancing overall health and well-being. Edidion Martin, reporting for Spectrum Television. Safety is
Still to come in the news. Nigeria to pay more for Canada's potash amid Russian sanctions. Do stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. In Africa, Somali Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab has said it killed more than 170 Burundian soldiers who were in Somalia as part of an African Union force. It also said it had taken complete control of the AU base where they were stationed, which is more than 100 kilometers northeast of the capital, Mogadishu. There were reports of heavy gunfire following the pre-dawn raid and weapons fired from helicopters. According to reports, the jihadist group frequently carries out bombings and gun attacks as part of its war against Somalia's central government. Still in Africa, as Kenya's general elections are approaching, tension between President Uhuru Kenyatta and his Vice President William Ruto is mounting, with President Kenyatta asking his deputy to resign. Kenyatta claimed that Ruto did not act enough for his country. The general elections are meant to happen in August, and 47 candidates have already joined the race. Reports say although Kenyatta can no longer stand for re-election after 2 terms, William Ruto is resenting him for backing Raila Odinga, a former prime minister. Meanwhile, the president does not have the ability to get rid of his deputy, as he can only be removed through impeachment or incapacity. Elsewhere, Russian mercenaries have been accused of summarily executing, torturing and beating civilians in the Central African Republic. Speaking with Human Rights Watch, witnesses alleged that in one incident last July, Russian-speaking fighters had shot dead at least 12 unarmed men at a roadblock. According to them, most victims were put in a shallow hole by the road near Bosangor. The Central African Republic's government has denied hiring mercenaries from the private Russian Wagner group to fight rebels. UN experts have also accused Russian mercenaries of committing systematic and grave human rights violations in the Central African Republic, which is one of the world's poorest countries, but rich in diamonds, gold and uranium. In Mali, the ruling junta has announced it is breaking off from its defense accords with former colonial ruler France, condemning flagrant violations of its national sovereignty by the French troops there. In a televised statement, the junta spokesman, Colonel Abdoulaye Maiga, noted that there had been a profound deterioration in military cooperation with France. Maiga cited multiple instances of French forces violating the country's airspace, referring to the June 2021 decision by France to end joint operations with Malian forces. According to reports, tensions between France and the junta in Mali, which seized power in August 2000, have been rising for some time, with the announcement being the latest confirmation of deteriorating relations between both parties. In a related development, Paris has responded to Mali's decision to end its military cooperation agreement with France, describing it as unjustified. France said it considers that the decision absolutely contests any violation of the bilateral legal framework. France had already been pulling troops out of the country in the wake of 2 recent coups. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has again underlined the extreme gravity of the consequences of Russia's aggression against Ukraine and reiterated his call for a ceasefire. During a telephone call with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, Macron also expressed his concern about the situation in Donbas and Mariupol and called on Russia to allow evacuations from the Azovstal plant to continue. He called on Russia to live up to its responsibilities as a permanent member of the Security Council by putting an end to the aggression. In a related development, more than 100 evacuees, many who have escaped the Mariupol steelworks, have reportedly arrived in Ukrainian-held Zaporizhia. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Olha Stefanishyna said women and children were rescued from sites in the shattered southern port city at the weekend. Stefanishyna added that hundreds of civilians, however, remain trapped under the rubble of the steelworks. The Red Cross said it was pleased the evacuation was a success, but was frustrated many more people were left in what it termed as hell. In the meantime, there have been explosions in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv, as confirmed by the city's mayor, Andrei Sadovy. Sadovy said the city was experiencing power outages following a Russian airstrike. He said 2 power substations were damaged as a result of the missile strike and that there is no electricity in parts of the city. In a social media post, Sadovy urged people to stay in bomb shelters. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree on retaliatory economic sanctions in response to the unfriendly actions of certain foreign states and international organizations. According to the decree, Russia will forbid the export of products and raw materials to people and entities sanctioned. The decree also prohibits transactions with foreign individuals and companies hit by Russia's retaliatory sanctions and permits Russian counterparties not to fulfill obligations towards them. Under the decree, the Russian government has 10 days to compile lists of foreign individuals and companies to be sanctioned, as well as to define additional criteria for a number of transactions that could be subject to restrictions. Still on the Russian invasion, foreign embassies are slowly reopening their doors in Ukraine's capital as the security situation there improves. Hungary reportedly became the latest country to announce that its embassy was operating out of Kiev once again, the same day that Denmark said it too would be reopening its embassy. In a related development, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has revealed the West made a mistake in not helping Ukraine in 2014 when Russia seized the country's Crimean Peninsula. Johnson also said the West were too slow to grasp what was really happening between Russia and Ukraine and collectively failed to impose the sanctions that they should have put on Russian President Vladimir Putin. Johnson, who disclosed this to the Ukrainian parliament today, vowed that the West would not repeat the same mistake this time amid the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. Meanwhile, Pope Francis says he has offered to travel to Moscow to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss the war in Ukraine, but has not yet heard back. The Pope told newsmen that he had sent a message to the Kremlin 20 days after the Russian invasion via the Vatican's top diplomat, as well as having a 40-minute Zoom call with the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. It is the first time the pontiff has mentioned Russia or publicly named Putin since the beginning of the war in Ukraine more than 2 months ago. Still on the foreign scene, Iranian oil minister Javad Oghi has tweeted that he met Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro during his visit to the South American country. Oghi said the two oil producers aimed to boost cooperation. He said Iran-Venezuela relations had a long history and that both countries want to use all capacities to develop joint relations and cooperation. And now it's time for the latest business and stock market stories. Here is Blyden Ukem.
Thank you, Xavier Roberts, and good evening. It's another business news. My name is Blyden Ukem. In the news, we begin with commodities as aluminium price falls to over 3-month low. Aluminium is used widely in aerospace application, packaging, automobiles, and railroad cars, as also for construction material. China accounts for nearly 60% of global aluminium output. Bauxites, the raw material for aluminium, are located in Australia, China, and Guinea. Aluminium futures fell below $3,000 per ton mark, a level not seen since early January as coronavirus-induced restrictions in top consumer China and the prospect of aggressive tightening from major central banks hit metal demand. Recent data from China increases the gloomy outlook, with the world's second largest economy reporting that factory activity contracted for a second straight month to its lowest level since February of 2020. Also, soaring aluminium prices and export disruption has helped Chinese smelters to scale production to record levels. Once activity picked up, excess inventory would hit the global markets and pose a significant downside to prices, according to global reports. Still in China, Chinese social media have shut down the accounts of prominent market analysts who drew attention in market weeks to the dramatic slowdown in the country's economy and the effects of government policy on the tech industry. Over the weekend, Tencent's WeChat froze the public account of Hong Ha, managing director and head of research at Bocom International, the investment banking arm of Bank of Communications, a state-owned bank and China's fifth largest. The move came after he posted about huge outflows of capital from the country and made bearish forecasts about the Chinese stock market on social media. And in Nigeria, Nigerian clearing agents are set to drag customs before the National Assembly. The Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agents, ANLCA, has described government as insensitive over the 15% National Automotive Council's levy placed on imported used vehicles. According to the group, the levy was meant for new vehicles imported into the country, but the Nigeria's Customs Service extended the tax to used vehicles. According to the clearing agent's acting national president, Kayode Farinto, the association had chosen to drag the Customs and the Finance Ministry to the National Assembly. Farinto stated that decisions regarding the elimination of a 15% levy is in collaboration with the Motor Dealers Association within the country. Still in Nigeria, Nigeria to pay more for Canada's potash amid Russian sanctions. Nigeria's deal with Russia involving potash trade has taken a hit from the United States-led sanctions as the country is forced to trade with Canada. The Russian government and Nigeria had signed a potash trade deal in 2019 to import potash from Aralchem, a Russian company. Prior to the sanction, which includes blockage of international trade, Nigeria received supplies of about 5 cargoes from Russia. Potash is a raw material for fertilizer used to resist disease, aid growth of plants, preserve water, and support crop yield. Its usage also extends outside the farmland, with manufacturers imputing potash for the production of pharmaceuticals, detergents, ceramics, as well as alternatives to de-icing salts. The largest producer are Canada, Russia, Belarus. The three countries accounted for 79% of the potash traded globally in 2019. Others are China and Israel. The price of potash rose to $300 per ton last year, but jumped by 266% to trade around $1,100 per ton as of late March 2022, according to Merco Press. The hike in price is linked to the Ukrainian invasion and sanctions against Russia and Belarus. This is all on business news. Do stay with Xavier Robert for the rest of the news.
Many thanks, Blyden. Still to come in the news. Ancelotti set to retire after a Real Madrid job. Do stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. In health, a mental health expert, Professor Taiwo Sheikh, says mental health care services should be integrated into primary health care, general hospital and tertiary level care. Sheikh noted that the integration will help reduce stigma and the number of patients visiting traditional homes for care. Sheikh, a professor of psychiatry at the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Kaduna State, said there was a huge gap in the number of mental health services available in the country and the number of people demanding the services. Speaking with newsmen, the medical expert lamented that lack of specialists, inadequate modern mental health facilities, and poor funding were confronting mental health services in the country. Professor Sheikh called on the government to address the gaps for people with mental illnesses and ensure they had access to modern mental health services and stop patronizing unorthodox care. Still in health, Professor of Virology Professor Abdul Salam Nasidi has called for the strengthening of routine immunization in the country, noting that it will help reduce deaths from preventable diseases. According to the virologist, routine immunization has saved lives for generations and will continue to do so in the future, and no one should die from a preventable disease. Speaking to newsmen in Abuja, the medical expert stressed that a long life for all starts with access to vaccines. He added that vaccines are powerful tools to fight against emerging and re-emerging infections like polio, yellow fever, cervical cancer, and more. Now in sports, Napoli striker Victor Osimhen is not short of suitors as top European clubs continue to vie for the Nigeria international ahead of the transfer window. Despite a season blighted by injuries, the Nigeria international has been in impressive form, scoring 17 goals and registering 6 assists in 29 appearances in all competitions. Reports say his performance has seen several European clubs interested in signing the 23-year-old striker, with Premier League clubs Arsenal, Manchester United, Newcastle and recently Liverpool all linked with the Nigerian. Still in sports, the sale of Chelsea Football Club has hit a significant snag over fears owner Roman Abramovich has made a U-turn on his promise to write off the £1.6 billion he is owed. After a bidding process which lasted almost 2 months, a consortium headed by La Doge's part owner Todd Boehly was picked as the preferred bidder. Reports say U.S. merchant bank Rain Group have given the Boehly consortium an exclusivity period of around 5 to 7 days to complete the purchase. It could be recalled that late last week, Chelsea told both the government and rival bidding groups that they wanted to restructure the way the club is being sold, with debts of £1.6 billion paid off to Jersey-based company Camberley International Investments, which appears to have links to Abramovich. Still in sports, Real Madrid coach Carlo Ancelotti has said that he will retire when he leaves the La Liga champions, but that he is prepared to stay at the Santiago Bernabeu for several years. The 62-year-old Italian became the first coach in history to win all 5 of Europe's top leagues this season with Real, who also face Manchester City on Wednesday in their Champions League semi-final second leg. Reports say the Italian is under contract with the Spanish Giants until 2024 after rejoining the club for a second spell in charge last year from Everton. Meanwhile, as Real Madrid celebrated their La Liga title win, Carlo Ancelotti was already trying to direct momentum towards Wednesday's Champions League semi-final second leg against Manchester City. Many had wondered whether celebrations were appropriate or sensible, given how they were sandwiched between the 2 mammoth games against City, especially after Pep Guardiola's side left Madrid needing to pull off another rescue act following the Spanish champions' 4-3 defeat in the first leg. Recall that Madrid had beaten Espanyol 4-0 on Saturday, and the players were celebrating at Plaza Cibeles after an open-top bus had wound its way through the city to the statue where players and fans always toast their biggest trophies. And on our entertainment news, here is Beto Brian.
Hello and welcome to the Entertainment Desk. I am Beto Bryan. First off in our news bulletin this evening, Universal Music Group signed Stonebwoy to Def Jam Africa. The Ghanaian artist Livingstone Satkele, better known as Stonebwoy, the award-winning dancehall singer, is the newest member of Def Jam family. His new single, Therapy, is set to be released tonight via Def Jam Recordings, 0207 Def Jam, and Def Jam Africa with worldwide support for label. Therapy follows an already illustrious career that includes 4 albums, countless hit songs and movie roles, not to mention his philanthropic work as part of the Livingstone Foundation, which educates young Africans and elevates the youth of Ghana. The single is the first release from Stonebwoy's newly signed record deal with Def Jam, home to some of the continent's biggest names in hip-hop, Afrobeats and trap talents, and serves as the lead single for Stonebwoy's brand new album, which is set to be released later this year. Symphno Delmini, CEO of Universal Music South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, is thrilled to welcome yet another African megastar to Def Jam, he said, claiming that Stonebwoy is a true African talent who works to lift the hearts and spirits of those around him whilst producing fresh sounds that keep blowing the world away, and he said they look forward to what 2022 has in store for Stonebwoy. Away from that story, Post Malone has posted a release date for his long-awaited promised album, 12 Karat Toothache, which will be out on the 3rd of June 2022. He announced this in a social media message that contained little else besides a blurry red image and a link to pre-save the album on streaming services. The album will mark the performer's first on the Mercury record label, the revival of which was announced by Republic Records earlier in April. Tyler Arnold, the newly installed president of Mercury, signed and developed Post Malone at Republic, where he had been executive VP of A&R. Post Malone had revealed the title of the album in January in a Billboard cover story meant to help launch the record that made some fans believe it was coming sooner than it ultimately did. He spoke of the album in progress as far back as April 2022, teasing a song off the album titled One Right Now, a collaboration with The Weeknd, which was released in November. It debuted and peaked at number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. Finally, on our last story from the Entertainment Desk this evening, Kim Kardashian attends Met Gala wearing Marilyn Monroe's iconic Happy Birthday Mr. President dress. On Monday night, with platinum blonde hair and a dazzling 60-year-old crystal-covered dress, in embracing this year's theme of In America, an anthology of fashion, Kardashian wore the exact dress that Monroe did when she sang Happy Birthday to John F. Kennedy for his 45th birthday in 1962. Monroe's iconic dress, originally bought for an estimated $1,440, was sold for $4.8 million at an auction in 2016 and is currently maintained by Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, according to Vogue. Created 60 years ago by Hollywood designer Jean-Louis with the help from Bob McKee, the shimmering dress is one of Monroe's most iconic looks. It was loaned to Kardashian by the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, an event franchise that purchased the gown for the record-breaking fee at the 2016 auction. And that's our package from the Entertainment Desk this evening. I am Beto Bryan, thanking you for watching. Now over to Xavier Roberts.
Many thanks, Beto. Well, that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, and you have a pleasant night rest.